Thank you for joining us on Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon, or it might even be Sunday morning. My name's Helen McCarthy. I'm one of the directors on the INA board. And today's webinar is Working When Parents Are at Home. And I think we're all probably suffering a bit of that now. Our two hosts for this webinar will be Rachael Lubin and Laurin Green. And I'm going to hand straight over to them. And can I just remind you all to keep your mics muted? Thanks.
Can I mute my mic?
Oh, no. Hi, I'm Rachael Lubin. I'm also on the board of directors for the International Nanny Association. I've been on the board for about 3 years now, and I have been in the industry about a little over 8 years, switching families pretty frequently, so I have a lot of different kinds of experiences with a lot of different kinds of families. But every family I've worked for has had either one stay-at-home parent or one work-from-home parent. It's sort of a little niche specialty I sort of developed for myself. So hopefully I have some good tips for you. If not, I know that Laurin also has a lot of experience and will be able to give you different kinds of tips as well. So Laurin, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Laurin. I am 15 years as a nanny as of Memorial Day. So in about a month, I'm about a month away from my 15-year start point, when I decided teaching was not going to be the thing for me and started nannying. Mostly been a live-in, and I started working with at-home parents mostly because I like to travel, and that kind of went hand in hand. I started looking for jobs that had travel because I love doing it, and obviously when you're traveling, the parents are around. And I've had 2 positions with stay-at-home parents who weren't working, and I've had 3 kind of long-term positions with work-from-home parents, so I've done both. I'm now traveling exclusively with the family, literally have no idea when I will come back to the US, currently on a farm outside of London for the duration of this isolation. Not only with mom and dad home, but also grandma and grandpa. So I've got lots of at-home people with us at the moment. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I've done all the educational stuff and been involved in the INA without actually being involved in the INA up until now. So this is my debut.
Thanks, Laurin. So I think that we'd like to keep this fairly casual. If you have a question, write it in the chat box. And then Helen will probably unmute herself and read your question. But also, if you want to ask it yourself, if it's too long to write or you just don't want to write it, you can use the raise hand feature on Zoom. I think everyone has you can like choose to raise your hand. At the bottom, it's like I don't know, there's like a symbol if you're on a desktop anyway. So you can do that, and Helen will also sort of call on you just so we can keep it a little bit clean and we're not talking over each other. Again, yeah, if you can keep your mics on mute, that would be really helpful, just because background noise does sort of take over a little bit. So we are here to answer any questions that you might have. I think we both have a few notes and pointers that we can start off on. Maybe we can go back and forth, Laurin. Yeah, okay, so my first note, like my first overall thought when I was kind of prepping for this is that like comparison is the thief of joy. There's that like famous phrase. If you're trying to compare a new situation where parents at home to your old situation where you had total autonomy, it's just gonna steal any joy that you could possibly get out of this time, because you're always gonna wish for something else. And nannies and parents may want different things, and parents at home may want different things. Nannies are gonna be better at different parts of the day than parents are, probably. And parents may be better at parts of a day than nannies are. I mean, for example, for me, I'm much better at the morning routine when it's really fast and hectic, even still, because we're doing online school. But parents can get my youngest charge to eat better than I can, and always have been able to. So there's kind of this great where we can bounce off of each other and go back and forth. But I would just strongly recommend to try not to look back into that time when parents were away and be like, oh, I wish it was that, I wish it was that, because I think, you know, we're in this for the long haul. So I just would encourage people not to start comparing their times to back when it was something else, back 6 weeks ago, you know, a long time ago.
One of my notes is really very similar to that, in that I had written the idea that trying to identify the parts of the day that are valuable to the parents, to include them, to figure out what parts of the day are meaningful, whether it's extra snuggles or reading books or those times of day that are, and that also don't disrupt. And then also identifying the parts of the day that are really disruptive and that are harder, either that they don't enjoy or that the kids find to be harder to multitask with lots of adults, and kind of work your day around that. We're currently right now eating, 3 meals a day all together at a big round table. One of the parents absolutely loves to feed the baby. So he gets to sit next to the baby every meal. And that's like a little break that we get, not to have to manage that mess. And the other parent sits on the opposite side of the table because it's not her time of the day. But she loves to come in after nap time and do snuggles. I have found that going down for nap to be a time when it's really better just me and the kids. And that's something that I try to communicate. And so kind of focusing on which parts of the day they will get value from and that the kids will get value from, not just looking at it at a perspective of what makes my life easier, trying not to be selfish about it, looking at it from the other perspectives from the parents and the kids as well.
Yeah, I think we had talked about that, how in both of our current situations, it's easier for us to put children down for nap, but as soon as they wake up from nap, it's a really great time for their parents to have one-on-one time in the room. They can read a book. They can just sort of help them actually wake up before maybe snack time. And so we've just kind of had to learn that is the time when parents are available and want to engage with their children, and their children are receptive also to that time with their parents. I had said, my point too is scheduling times where each adult can be the priority or have some authority or control of the day, which is kind of what we've been talking about. I think that if I could design this for all of us, parents would have pretty specific office hours in a separate space. And that's, I think, always something you can recommend. Like, hey, I think it's going to work better for all of us if you choose to work in a separate space, because then we know not to bother you if you're in your office and the door is closed. The children know that's kind of an off-limits time, and you get really quality time to work, even if it's only a few hours in the morning or in the afternoon that you choose to have those closed door office hours. I really think separate spaces are very helpful if you can. I mean, I work in a high-rise condo building. There's probably not as much space as a larger home or estate, but we still can carve out our individual spaces so no one sort of gets their toes stepped on, no one's authority gets challenged, because there are those carved out times in the day. I think that as nannies, we are good at perfecting a schedule with children. We know what works for them when we're alone with them, but it can be hard for parents to know what that's like, especially at the beginning if they haven't seen it. If they're not home all the time and all of a sudden they are home and they're seeing your schedule during the weekday might look very different than their schedule with them on the weekends. I know for sure that's how it is with the family that I work for. It can be intimidating for them to see how quickly and efficiently you run things. And so I think having a little bit of grace for parents is important as well. Yeah, so
that was one of the big points that I had in my notes, was the idea of seeing this from the perspective of the parents, and in my case also grandma, that it can make things more challenging when grandma wants to be involved in what we're doing, but to try to look at it from the perspective of she's getting more one-on-one time, more quality time with her grandchildren than she will probably ever have again, and how valuable is that? And if I keep my perspective on how each moment is valuable to the kid and to the rest of us as adults around them, and take myself out of it, take my ego, my own desires to make things get done quickly and to move on, it really makes everything so much better when I get to step back, and maybe it does take us an hour longer to get somewhere, but it's valuable time for the kids and for grandma, and that makes it so much more enjoyable for me to see it from that perspective. And that's very true for parents as well. Any time that I can go, this is time that they're getting that they would never ever get in any other circumstance, and just kind of take a deep breath and let that be what they're going to take away from this in 5 years and 10 years, is that time that they were at home with their parents, and that their parents are getting to see the routine for the first time in a way they probably never have before. And I just think it's a really cool experience for them, and I mean, my case is a little different. And one of the things I said to Rachel is I'm not quite sure how much I can offer, given that this is nothing changed in my world. The parents I work for are always home. We have a very set routine on how the parents kind of come and go. And I think because the kids know how the parents work, the dad literally did a work call while riding Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland. It just flows with us. It's just part of our complete normal. But I look at it from that perspective of what are the kids getting out of this moment, even if it isn't going quite how I want it to go.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned very on in my career, but that still absolutely takes work on a daily or weekly basis, is knowing when to step in and when to step out. And it's always something that you see a lot on like job boards. Like, this is something that parents want you to be able to do, but it's extremely difficult. It's a lot harder than it sounds. It takes a lot of experience, and it sort of reinvents itself with each family. You can have your own little tips on how to manage it yourself, but I feel like every family have to start over and learn the cues about when parents want me to step in and out. Now, and for a lot of times, if parents are interacting with their children, but I kind of know that it's not going to last more than 5 or 10 minutes, I always kind of be that shadow, like right behind the door. Maybe I can even make eye contact occasionally with the parents where the children can't see me. So if they give me the look of like, please get me out of here, then I'm right there to sort of save them and step in and pull out an activity, or, tell them it's time to go do something. That way the parents can have a safe and swift exit. But I just think that's an extremely huge part. Probably one of the biggest parts of working with stay-at-home or work-from-home parents is knowing when to step in and when to step out.
I can see someone really questioning this if they're stuck in a New York City apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, where you're literally all on top of each other. I feel, and it's hard for me to give advice sitting here going, well, yeah, I do have room. I have plenty of space that I can move and go somewhere else. And I know that for some nannies, they just don't have, there's like no space right now, and they're on top of each other in an environment that's not made for that. And goodness, that's honestly, I work for a family where it's okay to pick up my phone every once in a while, and I can literally scroll through Instagram just to check out, even if I'm in the same room with them, they're doing a puzzle with their kid. I think it just gives a little bit of separation. And I know that there are a lot of families where that wouldn't be okay, but it just helps, to create a little bit of separation when letting the parents have that time with their kids. And I think if parents feel like you're respecting their time with their kids, if you can focus on that as the priority, it then just follows over to everything else, because they're then going to respect your time with the kids, or they're at least much more likely to respect the time that you are doing homeschooling or a meal or those things that you do one-on-one with the kids. And they're much more likely to respect that time if they're then feeling respected during their times with the kids. And so there's the benefits there for you on the back end when you're respectful of the parents in that relationship.
Yeah, I agree that it should go back and forth. I know we're probably going to hear some stories where
I know, exactly. Yeah, no. And I think you have to preface all of this by saying what works for one will never work for others. I asked my co-nanny, who is much younger than I am and much newer at this. I said, what advice would you give as a nanny working with work from home parents or stay at home parents? And her answer was, work for parents that you like to be around. I agree. And I know at this point, if you're stuck in this situation, you probably can't make that switch right now, but it really does make the job so much more enjoyable and doable. I used to joke that the trick was mind reading. Like, if you can think along the same lines as your boss, if you think similarly, and you can make the choices that they would make, man, it's just so much easier. Whereas if you're working with someone who they just surprise you with the decisions they make every time they open their mouth, and you can't predict and you can't stay 2 steps ahead, it's a totally different ballgame. And I feel for those nannies. I know that that's a much harder position to be in.
Absolutely. I tell people at interviews now that one of my main goals is to be able to anticipate need. I will feel successful in my job if I can anticipate the needs of the children and the household. And of course, it doesn't happen immediately. I generally give them a 3 to 4 month time frame, because I need to see things over and over and over again, and different seasons, literally and figuratively, of their life. But that is definitely one of the goals. And I think when you do work for a stay-at-home or work-from-home parent, that becomes even a bigger priority, is understanding when they're likely to come out of their office to have breakfast or lunch. If they come out of the office with headphones in, does that automatically mean kids can't talk to them? If they order takeout every day, are they gonna want you to take care of it and put it in the fridge, or are they gonna want you to leave it totally at the door and not touch it? Like, all of those sort of little anticipations help make the day smoother. And if the little like irritations don't happen and build up, then those bigger segments of time are much more likely to go smoothly if you don't have the tiny irritations of just uncommunication, not communicating, or miscommunicating.
My old job, when people would ask me about my job, and I would say that I had two different jobs, because I had the job when dad was home, when dad was around, and I had the job when mom was around, and they both had very different styles and very different desires. Dad, when he got home, he still wanted me in charge. He wanted to be around, he wanted to play and be silly on the floor with his kids, but he did not want to walk in, step in, and start giving the kids baths and parenting. Whereas mom, the second she walked in the door, she wanted me to walk out the door. And if she had time to be in the room with the kids, she wanted me to go find something else to do. Whereas dad wanted to co-care in those situations. And so it was switching back and forth between those two roles. It was the same day, same parents around, but I had two different roles, and it was knowing what they wanted. And sometimes parents aren't able to put that into words. They're not able to say that they like the help or that they don't want the help. And it's picking up on those cues and listening, being really good listener to what's being said around, and picking up those cues on when to step in and when to step out.
Yeah.
We've
Helen,
got a couple of questions. Yeah, we
awesome.
do. How to deal with young children when parents are at home? They usually behave different.
Well, I definitely say to my kids from a very early age that it is okay if there are different rules with different adults. That in my situation, I have a co-nanny. So there's 4 of us, and now we've got grandma as well. So grandma's actually amazing and really good about knowing when she should not make blanket decisions and to send the kids to us. But there are 4 of us that do things differently. And I start very young at telling them that's okay. It's okay if mom lets you hold the bottle of cream and do it yourself. I don't like that mess, and so with me it's not. So I just say it out loud. I communicate those things out loud to the kids all the time, that there are differences. And I also am very, very, very aware that if the parent is there and engaged, to let them make the decisions if they want to. There is nothing worse than being overruled by a parent in front of the kids. So don't put yourself in that position. They are the parents. That's their right. So don't put yourself in the position. If you can see them engaged and you can see them wanting to be the decision maker, let them. I have trouble thinking of any situation where it would make sense for me to make a decision when the parent was in the room, and there was some flexibility in what we did. I really try not to put myself in that position.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Setting yourself up for success.
Yeah.
And that definitely can mean that when everyone's home, you're not going to get your way all the time. It's not going to be the normal. We have a new normal, and that involves maybe a little bit of messiness and uncertainty in who is going to make that decision. But you can save yourself a lot of heartache if you're just like, if the parent says this, then it's that. And I think I've had to let go a lot over the past 8 years. I really, really wanted control at the beginning. And every single job has shown me that the more I let go of that control, the happier I'll be. And probably the better the working relationship will be. I had to probably let go of a lot of ego. And that was just, I had to do the work personally to let that go, because I don't have all the answers. And eventually in all of our jobs, the nanny leaves, and the children need to know that they can trust their parents to make good decisions for them.
I have had that in my head for many years, just to remind myself that the parents are there forever, that your role is temporary, and that the parents are the ones that are there. And that's the relationship that just supersedes anything else, and that's really an important thing. You were talking and I had a thought and I should have written it down, because I'm old and I can't remember anything.
I'll let you think about it. Elaine says, the child she cares for is a terror with her when the parents are around. If she does not want something, she becomes a terror and hits and screams and is almost impossible.
Yeah, I think that obviously there could be many factors at play here. If you can have a quick conversation, with parents and be like, hey, when this happens, this is my plan, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take child into their room and we're gonna do a distracting game. If they continue to scream, would you like me to get you or to allow you to step in, or would you like to stay in your office and me handle it? And I think setting it up that, one, they get to make the decision, but two, you're really giving them a very narrow decision. It's either you do it or I do it, right? You come out and handle this every time, or you let me handle that every time and then you do not come out. Those are the two real choices that we have to make this effective and to make the child understand that who's in charge and who has authority at what time of the day. So if parents can back you up even once, then every subsequent time you can be like, actually, mommy has me in charge right now. I am the one who's going to help you through this. I'm going to help you through this tantrum, this emotional moment, and mommy's going to stay in her office. And so I think that eventually it works, but parents absolutely have to back you up. They cannot come in and rescue the child, or else the child will scream to be rescued every time.
Yeah, I feel like for me, it almost comes down to how I deal with tantrums. It's almost completely separate from whether or not the parent's involved. I try to deal with parent tantrums before they ever happen. I don't think I've dealt with a tantrum with a kid in a long time. Make sure that they've got a good routine, that they know what's coming, they know what's expected, make sure they're fed, make sure they've slept. Those are all the same, whether parents are in the house or not. Those are the same ways that I deal with a tantrum. Although, gosh, I really struggle because I can't even remember the last time that was something that I dealt with.
Yeah, I do think that you're right, that having a routine and having children know what to expect helps. Obviously, we don't know if there's other extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
Laurie says, I'm a nanny for a 5-year-old girl and 13-month boy. It used to be very easy to put the baby down for naps, as he would fall asleep easily in his crib. Now he will only fall asleep in my arms and I have to transition him to his crib to sleep. I think it's because of all the changes, and also he hears his dad, who is in the next room. Any advice?
Sound machine? Yeah. 100%. If he can hear his dad in the next room, I would address that. I would figure out if there's somewhere else that the dad could move for nap time, or if there was a louder sound machine or a second sound machine that can be put in. That my kids would struggle with that as well. If that were an issue, I would move dad, or I would block the sound, because I'm sure that's hugely triggering for a kid. My kids wouldn't want to do it either.
And we have a sound machine and a fan, and we actually have a third, we have a different sound machine that we could use. So there's 3 things in the baby's room where we could utilize all 3 of them if we needed to, and they're fairly inexpensive. You can get it like a stand-up fan, for not very much, or like a little portable sound machine to make that extra noise. So I agree with sound machine. I also do agree that you're probably right, that children right now are expressing all of these feelings and emotions that we don't even know how to handle and deal with right now. They're having to deal with it in the only ways they know how. And if I were a baby, that would absolutely be like more cuddles, more one-on-one time, bigger, more intense emotions at times. Like, that just seems really normal. And if you know nap time is at the same time every day, and you're going to have to spend 20 or 30 minutes with that baby, that toddler, then maybe you can plan for that 5-year-old to have an activity that they do on their own during that time, whether it's a special coloring book that they only get to use at that time, or a special sticker book, or almost a new activity every couple of weeks. That's what we're doing now. Like, I've spent a lot of money on online shopping, bringing in new activities, so there's always something fresh for the children to do. So yeah, I would just set aside that time, knowing that you're going to have to be with this child, and let the other child have some independent play time or independent work time.
Yeah. So I have a 13-month-old little boy right now as well. Are you down to, if it's 1 nap a day, if you're still doing 2 naps a day, it may just be that they're getting towards that point of needing to transition to 1 nap a day. If they're already on 1 nap a day, it may be that they're overtired by the time they're getting to that nap. And that's one of, it could also be, a lot of, if you follow the Wonder Weeks and the leaps that the children go through, it could also be just one of those developmental leaps where they need that kind of extra hands-on and are going to fight you a little bit. My 13-month-old right now just loses his mind every time you get a diaper change, whereas he was totally fine 2 weeks ago, but now it's like the worst thing you've ever done to him. So they go through those changes, and you'll be looking back in a couple of weeks and you'll have moved past it and you'll have forgotten what the issue was, and it'll be something new.
Was there another question, Helen, before we move on?
Hang on, we've got replies. Can you guys speak to meltdowns in littles and the littles trying to triangulate with mum and a nanny? I nip meltdowns fast, mum lets them go on and gives the meltdown an audience. That's from Catherine.
Oh. Well, I know Catherine, and I'm sure that she's had the conversations with the parents, but that's all you can really do, is try to be on the same page with the parents. That if mom likes the way she's handling it and the way that it goes for her, then you need to step out and let her parent the way that she wants to parent. If you think it's something she'd like to fix, that she'd like to see done differently, then that conversation when you're not in the middle of the meltdown, to offer suggestions or to talk through what you would do or how you could potentially support and help her.
Yeah, I definitely think that children only triangulate and only try to pit adult against adult if they know it will work.
Yeah.
After a few times of frustration and it won't work, and they know it won't work, then they give up for a long time. They'll try again once they kind of reach a new developmental milestone, and they'll be like, maybe I'm going to try this again and see where everyone's at. And then that's frustrating because you're like, the rules and expectations, but it's just developmentally in their brain, they're trying to figure out what new works. But they only get a couple of tries to realize that is not going to work.
So my 3-year-old definitely knows it will never work, but she does it. She fakes it. Like she literally does the little fake pretend, and she literally smiles through it. Like she knows that she almost does it as a joke because she knows it doesn't work. I don't know. I think it's setting those boundaries from the beginning. I like starting with babies from the beginning because then you're there to set up those habits before they get old enough to push back.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I had on my list, I'm going to kind of step out of what we were just talking about, was having some kind of open communication. And at work, I'm actually not very much of a talker. Like, I feel like if my employers had to describe my personality, they'd be like, she has a personality, because I'm very even. I don't engage with the parents a lot. But I also want them to know what I'm doing with their children while they're in their office or in their room or whatever they happen to be doing. And so we not only keep like a baby log, but since the older child has been home from school, I just created my own log just on a piece of paper. It's nothing fancy, just with a couple of different colored pencils or pens. And it's like the academics that we worked on that day, the outdoor activity that we did that day. One of the things the parents told me very early on was they were like, you have 11+ hour days with these children, and now they're home, where we usually wouldn't allow TV during the day. We're gonna allow 30 to 60 minutes of some kind of educational TV every day, which gives me a break to check the laundry, to meal prep, to do all the things I would do when this other child was at school. And there's such long days now anyway. So I'll write down like what educational show we watched in case she's like, I want the show from earlier today or yesterday, then her parents will know. So for me, the written logs work much better just because I know that's going to be a communication style that works in the home that I work in. Some people might I definitely work for families that want the 10 minutes at the end of the day, where they're going to come out 10 minutes early to get a recap of the day. And we do that a little bit too, but you've got to have some kind of communication to where you've shown them what you've done with your day. It builds respect and trust when you're with their children. And maybe you already do that from before. I hadn't done that before because the child was at school or in extracurricular activities. And so there was already this regular schedule. But when we have to kind of make it up and go along on our own, it was nice for the parents to know that, we weren't watching TV all the time, even if that's when they came out every single day and saw us. And we were only in front of the TV because they came out at the exact time every single day. It's like, well, we've actually done all these other things. You just happen to come out at the same time every day.
I had to send a group text. We were maybe 2 or 3 weeks into all of this, to say that my 3-year-old, who had all these great skills at entertaining herself before this happened, now all of a sudden was melting down her. And it just took me a minute to realize, oh, okay, now we've got mom and dad around in the house all day. We're not doing outings at all. Grandma's now on top of us. There's literally somebody entertaining this child all day long. And I had to send a text that says, hey, if you see me completely ignoring your child, here's the reason why. I promise it's good for her. And the dad said later, he's like, oh, but isn't it so important that she knows that she's got all this time and attention and snuggles and one-on-one time? I was like, of course, and she's still going to get that. And I said to him, he happens to be a very handy good man. Like, he just can take care of anything and fix anything. And he tells me all the time it's because he just ran around his neighborhood and took things apart and was unsupervised, very free range parenting. And I was like, isn't that why you can do what you can do? And he's like, oh yeah. So I was like, so how do we give her that, even though there are 5 of us around her all day long and able to entertain her? And I just sent a text, hey, I'm going to ignore your kid. It's a good thing, I promise. But I have that relationship with them, and that was all it took. And so now I do. I literally will sit and read my book and leave her alone. And sometimes she hates it and will just stare at me, but she's eventually gotten back into playing on her own a little bit.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we're going to realize very quickly is this type of nannying is going to become the new normal. It is my personal belief, everything that we're saying here are personal beliefs, not the beliefs of the INA. I'm sure we should have had some sort of disclaimer, but it is my personal belief that work—
Mine definitely are.
Yeah, work and school are both going to change. I think that people are going to be working from home, at least part-time, significantly more. And I also think that school in some way, shape, or form will come home more than it ever has, or that it has in the last 50 years. And so I think that if this is not something that you can possibly enjoy ever in any situation, even if you love the parents, then it's a great sort of moment in time as we're all sort of taking some time to think about and reevaluate life and what we want it to be like after, which I hate saying that because I don't think there's going to be an after. There's going to be a slow new normal. I think we need to kind of reevaluate if this is something that we can do. And if it's not, then you'll have to work even harder to find a family where 2 parents actually go out and work every day, like 2 physicians or something like that. But for many people, I think people are just going to be working from home more. So we're going to need to get these tools and to practice this now, because the next job that we're going to go on an interview for, I think so many more of them will have parents at home a lot.
I remember a work at home parent conversation, a panel at Nanny Palooza or INA years ago, and I think it was Sue that was saying something along the lines of, this is going to become more and more of a thing that we see, and it can happen in the middle of a position where all of a sudden a parent's offered the ability to work from home. And that was years ago. And now this is just going to completely escalate it. And I think that companies now that see that they are able to do this stuff from home are going to go, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. Now that we know we were forced to try and to do it, I think it's definitely inevitable. And it may be that there are some people that find that it's just not the thing that works for them, that if they can't, especially if you're not in a good fit where you are able to communicate well, because now more than ever, having the ability to communicate with your employers is going to be just essential. I mean, more important than anything else. Being honest, being respectful, and being able to communicate. It's not really an option anymore to avoid communicating.
I definitely had be professional in this time more than possibly ever, because parents are going to have high emotions. We have high emotions, the children have high emotions, and we kind of, at least during work hours, have to be able to temper our emotions a little bit or a lot in order for them in their home to have their emotions that they're allowed to have in their home. I think parents are going to want to possibly commiserate with their nanny because it's another adult in their house that's not their spouse, or if they are raising children alone, it's another adult in the house, period. Whereas before they might have had a ton of coworkers to talk with and commiserate with and talk about the news or their worries or whatever. And now they just have you. And I think it's okay to allow parents to kind of have their discussions. I said at you, but not necessarily with you. Like, you're allowed to comfort parents as you would a friend or a colleague, but don't allow them to sort of pull you down into the gutter of constant complaining, constant worry, speculation of what's going to happen. So I would just try your best. Like, obviously, they're going to feel their feelings in their house just like we allow children to feel their feelings. But we also, for the most part, get to go home or to our own space at the end of the day. Yeah, if you're a live-in, maybe you just have to go to your own space, and then you can sort of commiserate with your people, a nanny, a friend, a family member, or whatever. But we have to try to maintain that professional boundary as much as possible. It's really hard. Like,
the thing that I would add to that, 100% agree. I would add to that you need to be very careful that you are not taking sides between the parents, that is like the key to being a professional, because if they are venting and they're now working with each other for the first time ever, and it's, that if you're the sounding board, be staying professional in that moment and not taking sides between the parents can be really hard when you're together all the time like this. And I think it's kind of needs to be one of those kind of golden rules when it comes to the nanny role.
Did you have more on your list, Lauren?
Yes, but we've jumped around, so I don't know. Let's see. I think the same rules that you would use with communicating with anybody are things that I try to focus on when I'm working with my employers. Things like making sure you're saying positive things, that you're not just always complaining, that you're not always telling them about how difficult the difficult times of the day was. I had a parent once tell me that, is it really all this bad? And I was like, well, no, I just told you about the 2 15 minutes that were hard and traumatic today. And I had left out the other 9 hours that had gone really well and that were good parts of the day. Making sure that compliment sandwich, that you throw in those positives, that especially when you're talking about someone's kids, it really does make everything else go down better. And, apologize when you need to. If something doesn't go well, if there's a moment that you slip up and you do overrule a parent because you didn't know they'd already said something to the child or whatever, apologize. Let them know if they feel respected. That's just kind of what this all comes down to me for me is making sure that everyone feels respected in their own role and in their own space. And sometimes that means, being the big girl and saying you're sorry if something hasn't gone the way that it should have. But these are also, as I was making my list, one of the things I wrote down is this feels a lot like the list that I would say if I was talking about how I relate to children, that all of the things that we do to help them communicate better and for them to manage their time and their emotions is all the same things that I would write down about how I communicate well with the parents and try to keep the day flowing as calmly as possible.
There's another question. Jeanette says, my parents are helicopter parents and trying to deal with that or discuss in a professional way. I need ideas. We are a good fit other than that.
Are they a helicopter parent because they are fearful of their children's safety? Are they helicopter parents because they think that it's the only option, that it's what's their reasoning behind it? Like, is it their parenting philosophy, or has there never been a conversation talking about how much children can benefit from being allowed to fall down? One of the phrases that I say a lot, I tend to talk out loud. I tend to think out loud. Whatever I'm thinking, it's how they pick up on it. One of the things that I always say is a child never learns to get back up if they don't fall down. They have to fall down to get back up. And so when a kid does fall down, I make sure that nobody runs over until the child actually asks for help, and that if they can get back up on their own. And so I say those things out loud, and now I hear the parents repeating it to the kids, something that I've been saying for over a year. They're now saying, and to grandma, to help her know to not step in. So I would pick up on the whatever little things you can that are changeable, that you think they might be willing to adapt to, and then step back and allow them to parent how they want if that's important to them.
Yeah, I usually just give one quick line that's like an evidence-based, not opinion, but like fact, sort of like you were saying, like, I know if children are awake and I know they're awake and they're better their crib, I often won't get them until they somehow call for me. And I have to frequently remind the older child, hey, if you want me, call me. I can hear you through the monitor, whatever. But parents aren't necessarily like that. If they know their children are awake, they want to go spend time with them because they have that minute right then. And they don't know that I'm doing 4 other things. And that's why I don't get children out of their bed until they ask to be like out of their bed or cry out or something. But if parents have that minute right then, that's all they're going to have for hours. They're like, no, I'm going to get this kid out of bed. And you're kind of like, 1, it interrupts our routine. 2, it's not what they're used to, but it's fine because you're their parent and we'll try again tomorrow or we'll try again at nap time. So I think that just sort of brings all of it together. Respect, understanding it's their children and their home. This is a super unique situation where they're going to get an increased amount of one-on-one time that they may never see again. And the children can have different rules for different people. And I also explained that really early. We have different rules for the park, for the library. We have different rules at this person's house and this person's house, and children absolutely can learn that.
Absolutely, they can learn that. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Because if you do, either raise hand or pop it in the chat.
One of the kind of interesting things that I was just doing I was kind of looking up what other people had said and what other blogs had said, just so we made sure we covered our bases here. And everyone knows this, but forgets this. It is really unusual over the long haul of humanity, like the long time of humanity, for people to be raised by 1 or 2 people. Like we've traditionally, historically, raised children in teams. That sort of it takes a village mentality. And so even though it's hard for us because we didn't do it that way, we didn't grow up that way, maybe our parents and grandparents didn't grow up that way, it wasn't too long ago that teams of people raised all their children together. And it's okay, and children absolutely have the capability to understand that they're going to get different things from different people. Maybe this person, cooks their breakfast a much better way, but everyone's going to cook at some point, or this person reads the best stories and this person's kind of trash at it, but they're still going to get that other person to read them stories sometime. So sometimes you just have to remember, like, it is normal for children to be raised by multiple people. It is less normal for them to be raised by 1 or 2 people. And so like it's all okay. Like children will adjust and adapt.
And I've read so many things about parents talking about this time from the perspective of, wow, this is really hard. Wow, this is so stressful. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. But what an amazing opportunity we're having to be in the home with our kids. This is even coming from like friends of mine who don't have a nanny there, and they are trying to now parent their children and work remotely at the same time. And it's really, really hard. But this is a really special time for them and a really stressful time at the same. And I just keeping that in perspective and remembering that throughout the day, I think just makes it all, at least for me, it makes it all easier to remember the big picture.
We've got a question from Jamaica. I'm working for a family where mum just passed away 2 months ago due to breast cancer. Dad works from home and has always worked from home. The kids are 4 years old and twin 2-year-olds. Since mum has passed, we're dealing with high emotions from the 4-year-old. He is clingy to his dad and throws tantrums more frequently. And dad has stepped in due to his wife being gone, which gives the 4-year-old the thinking of dad is here, so I don't need to listen or behave, because he knows he can just run into dad's office whenever he doesn't get his way. Just wondering if you've any advice for how to manage grieving dad and grieving kids, all while dad is working from home.
I remember hearing, I think I probably could even remember who it was that told me this, but they worked with a work from home parent, and they had a stoplight system where the dad's door had a red light and a green light. And if it was a time of the day when it was okay for kids to come into the office, there was a green light there. And if it was a red light, that meant that they couldn't go into the office. And it was a very visual way of identifying when that was okay and when that wasn't. But also I think you need to take this very, very slowly and delicately, and that time that he's got with his dad, if his dad is wanting that as well, I think is probably really important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I lost a parent as a teenager, which is definitely not the same thing as losing a parent as a child, a very young child. But I think there's probably, we often compare like 3-year-olds to teenagers because the brain is going through similar things. So maybe I can speak to this a little bit. Yeah, I know it feels like the world is out of control for that person, for that child. They don't know what's going to happen next. They sort of create, even as a 4-year-old, they probably create scenarios in their head. They might be having nightmares or night terrors, things that may not, we would think never would happen. They think is possible to happen because they likely thought it was never possible for one of their parents to go away and never come back in any capacity. So children need a lot of grace in the fact that there's way more going on in their head than we ever could imagine. I also like, as a general sort of parenting childcare tactic, but it sounds like it would work in this one, is to pretend that you're holding the child in an envelope. It's like the envelope system. So if the envelope is, the child can feel the walls around them, can feel the boundaries. They know where things are safe and where they are, but also if they give a little bit of a push, then you're gonna like move with them. But it's not so, you're not so far away and you're not so distant in your caring style that they can sort of have a tantrum or have a big emotional outbreak and you're not there for them to touch, feel, hear. So I love that sort of imagery of the child being in an envelope where they know their surroundings and their walls, they know the boundaries, they're gonna push against them because that's what children, teenagers, adults do, they push against their boundaries, but you're gonna be there to sort of envelope them in care. And that seems like it might be, like, sometimes I just think of that image and think, how would this work if this child was in a literal envelope right now? Because it helps me sort of pull ideas and be a little bit more gracious with that child, in knowing that they need me. They absolutely need me whether they want me or not. And I think you see that with teenagers a lot. They absolutely need the grown-up in their life. They just are going to push against you so hard. They're going to try to make you leave. They're going to try to make you super angry. But you have to show them that you're consistently there, that you're going to let them have their emotions, and then you're going to help them bring them back to a comforting place. And that's probably what the dad is going through too, except he doesn't have an envelope anymore. His security, his life, just all of the security in his spouse like went away. And so he's feeling all of this emotion by himself, and he has no envelope and no person to care for him. And of course, it's not the nanny's job. And I would suggest not putting yourself in the situation where you're his envelope or caregiver. He'll have to figure that out for himself with extra help or friends or family or whatever. But I think, allowing that child to know that you're there no matter what. This is not the time in the next 6 months to look for a new job. If you can stick it out, it's just not the time, because that child needs some consistency and needs to find their way back to some sort of equilibrium with their life and their emotions and their day and their time. So
I mean, and 4-year-olds, even who have not just lost their mom, that's a year of really big emotions. It's a really, developmentally, it's a year where they're so capable in a lot of ways, way more than they've ever been before, and yet still a little kid. It is a year of big emotions, even for the child who hasn't just lost their parent. Yeah.
Another question is, when you have a baby and a mum is home, what is the best way to handle a anxious mum when baby is crying?
So I'm a there's two cries kind of person. There's two cries. There's a cry that's more of a whiny, fussy, they're working it out, they can handle it on their own cry. And then there's the I'm in stress, I'm needing help, and I'm kind of that kind of crazy, really loud, tantrumy cry. And I am always going to respond to the second cry, and I'm almost never going to respond to the first cry. And I just talk that out with parents. And so I kind of make sure we're on the same page and they know what I'm listening for. And it's just how we communicate. It starts from when babies are very young.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Lauren.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Having dealt with lots of babies, that, as you say, there are two cries, and one is that fussy, and you're fine, and you'll get over it.
Yeah.
And the other one is I'm coming.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's how I explain it. I think I remember there being someone, I don't know, someone on Oprah years ago talking about like the 15 different cries or whatever it was. I break it down to there's two. There's one that I don't respond to, and then there's one that I do.
But there's an extra bit to throw in here, because she's Lurs has just written something else. How about when the parents are divorced and dad has the custody? Dad spoils them and let them to eat and do whatever they want. How do I communicate with dad?
I guess it depends on if he wants to communicate. I mean, if he's, when you've just gone through a divorce and that's an added element where if they've decided that's how they're going to parent, unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. I think you do try, you absolutely try to have that conversation, and you absolutely try to talk it out. But if they're not open to it, if they're not, what's the definition of insanity is to try something the same over and over again and expect a different result. At some point, you have to be the one to change if they're not willing to. And you decide if you can work with him and work within the confines of how he parents, or if it's not going to work for you.
In this situation, does it seem like dad is the employer or mom is the employer?
Oh, I'm assuming dad if they're with dad, but I know, that was my assumption was dad was the employer.
Okay, so like I think my assumption was the opposite, but that's so. I mean, obviously, you're going to be the employee of your employer. Yeah. So if they're at someone else's house, you don't get any control over that. You don't get any input, and do not input yourself into that situation. I know, because I've made that mistake. I've made all the mistake. And it will drive a wedge between you and your employer, between you and the children. It will make life very difficult. So don't get involved with the other house that's not your employer unless it has been agreed upon and talked about, and you figured out methods to do that. So you are just responsible for working with your employer. If the dad is the employer, then I would think that even with a new divorce or with a new custody situation, you're going to have a pretty serious talk about what life is going to look like moving forward, because life is very different for the children. They're going to be acting out more. Their parents in divorce situations often want to be the favorite, and so they will do what is in their power to be the favorite parent or the preferred parent. So the children love coming to see them, which of course we can find probably many articles which say we need to have some consistency. We need to have good boundaries. Children need to be eating healthy meals, having good bedtime routines at everyone's house. And so that's probably a pretty big conversation if this just happened. A new custody situation, a new lifestyle. You got to figure out where you are in that and where the parents are on that.
Yeah. Does it all come down to respect and communication? I feel like yeah. Sometimes
those are two hard words.
Sometimes you can overcomplicate this and talk about it for 55 minutes, and it really just boils down to some really basic, golden rules.
Yeah. I still think respect and communication are very hard, no matter what kind of relationship you're in.
Yeah. Actually, the respect is not two ways, 100%. Right. Yeah.
Was there anything else, Helen?
Nope, there's no other questions, unless anybody does have any other questions.
Can you tell that it's gotten dark in the UK?
Yeah.
Helen and I are both sitting in the dark now.
I have a lamp. I've got a lamp I put
on out the window.
I noticed you'd moved.
I tried. It's now pitch black outside. Nothing I can do. It's dark in this room.
Yeah.
I was just going to end by saying that this is a really hard time for everyone, for the whole world, right? We're communicating on different sides of the world, different time zones, but we're all kind of going through this together. It's very unusual. It's unprecedented. And to have grace for yourself, for how you perform at work. I don't perform at work 100% every day. And I probably never have, but I definitely don't now, because I need to save something for myself at the end of the day that I didn't have to save before, because we're having to think about all these things and life has changed a little bit. And so have grace for yourself, have grace for the children, that yes, they're extremely adaptable, but this is weird for them too, and they don't understand a historical context. They have zero idea what's going to happen in the future. And have some grace for your employers who are lucky enough to have you and you're lucky enough to stay employed. I'm so grateful every day that I'm able to go to work and get a paycheck, because I know that's not the case for so many people. I think it's important to use this time to prepare yourself for what our industry is going to look like in the future, which is a lot more stay-at-home, work-from-home parents, potentially a lot more homeschooling type of activities. I can see schools being like, this saves us a lot of money, so let's do 3 days a week at school and 2 days a week at home. So just have a lot of grace for yourself. Of course, allow yourself to step out of a hostile work environment, but also know that this is an extremely difficult time to be looking for a new job, to be getting a new job. So if you can stick it out, if it's not just tearing up your mental health, just try to stick it out. But you're worthy of not working in a hostile work environment if that's what it's become.
What she said.
Yeah, totally. And we're here, and if you've got a friend, if you can't pick up the phone, send them a message and that. And there are many groups. INA normally has a chat which would be taking place right now, but because of this webinar, it's not taking place today. But we have this type of discussion normally every week. In the UK, we have a Friday night social, and that went on for 3.5 hours this week, because we lost, as we know that there have been nannies in the US who have died. We've lost a close nanny friend in the UK to COVID-19 this week. So we've all been a bit grieving over here and everything. So, as Rachel and Lauren said, these are weird times that we just don't know. This could be the new norm, and, parents staying at home, it's not easy if you're not very used to that. Yeah. But thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Lauren, for a great webinar. Comments are coming down saying thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and leave some time for yourself at the end of the day.
Yes.
And take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. This was awesome.